Okay, so hello everybody. Thanks for being here this afternoon. Older man said my name many times. I'll say it once more because you know how these things go at this time. I'm Gonzalo Carracedo. I'm in charge of the Innovation Department of Technological Security, the great department of crazy science where your dreams come true. You can also die. And during this speech, I'm going to speak about some electric meters that we have here. Well, this speech, although I will speak about many things, didn't come from scratch. I mean, in fact, it would be quite unfair not to mention the researchers, the Spanish researchers that studied this topic at the University Carlos III in Madrid, at least Miguel and Gregorio. Miguel is here, I think, hey. And basically decided to analyze the communication protocols that were used by the smart meters. And they found many things that were extremely suspicious. And the point is that because of the limitations of the lab that they're working at, they weren't able to do many more things. But the things were there. So what I'm going to show you is just go beyond. This is like Newton. I'm riding giant shoulders, okay? So just to speak a little bit, the smart meters, I have to convey a crash course about the Spanish electric system. I hope I have time in 10 minutes. So when we call about the Spanish electric system, we speak about a network with a quite particular shape that is divided in 4 parts: generation, transport, distribution, and marketing. Okay? Generation, as you can imagine, it's about using a natural resource to generate energy. It can be a power plant, it can be a wind farm, and so on and so forth. The network distributes the electric energy through high voltage networks. This is what you see when you cross a peninsula by car, and the transportation line pours its energy at the distribution line that distributes not only the current at 220 volts to every single house, neighborhoods, villages, etc., but it also measures the consumption, and after that you have the marketer, that is the one that sends you the invoice. So the goal of this research has to do with the distribution network, where we have the electric meters. Here, well, you can see the summary. You can download the slides if you want. This is with high level of detail. Important thing of this distribution network is that it is managed through three systems in a remote way. There's a system that is called remote control that has to do with the high voltage equipment, remote operation of HV equipment, basically. We have the great switches that open or close the energy supply, and they close the energy supply between distribution networks of different companies. We also have the remote metering, that is about the simple action of the measuring remotely the energy consumption, and this has existed in the 90s. So it has technology from the 90s, like for example telephone modems. Yes. And after that, we came across this. It's called remote management, that has everything that could be done with remote metering, plus the change of parameters of the supply point where the measuring is taking place. So that is, they do many more things apart from measuring. And this is possible thanks to this amazing invention that you've heard about, or you should, because by law it should be at all your houses since January 2019, that are smart measurings by PLC. This remote management network is something a little bit difficult that I will try to explain during this speech. Well, basically the idea is that, well, this idea of telephone modems isn't valid anymore because it does not scale up. So at every house of every person, up to 15 kV, it will have a meter like this one. So they thought about different options. So the option they thought of was this: to use the current transmission lines in order to plug all the traffic data of the meters. these meters do not communicate directly to the distributor. They need to go to a device that is at the transformers of every neighborhood, what they call transformation centers, and at the same time, these PLC communications transform in other things like in IP traffic through devoted or not devoted networks, 3G, fiber, and you name it, what the distributor deems appropriate. If you think of a concentrator, this is a concentrator, okay, for you to have it in mind. Okay, about meters, sorry. What does a meter do? I think that here you all know what a meter does. I'm sure you don't know it. That's better. So a meter has to do what old meters used to do, to measure consumption and to store it. So there was a little wheel with the key H, and the operator came along, they noted on the number, and they issued an invoice. They can do this, of course. Fraud and tampering detection. I don't know if people maybe are too young, but some years ago, the classic meters had some kind of a plumb piece, like a seal that closed the meter. The idea is that if you opened the meter to change the consumption measures, that seal was broken. So the company would come along to sue you. They can do this, but they can also do more things. If, for example, you breach the meter, this will detect it because the consumption measures are weird. Measurements are weird. Or if you take the cables that feed the meter and you turn them around and the kilowatts go to the backwards, they will warn the distributor company. And definition of pricing periods, they also define the transformation ratio definition. This is very funny. I will tell you a little bit later. Power control definition and reconnection of internal PCS. Sometimes we do not pay attention to that. These smart meters have a switch inside that can cut the light if you go over the max consumption. So this can be set through the remote management protocol. And connection and disconnection of the power supply, consider as the supplier deems appropriate. So I've talked a lot about the PLC, how the meters communicate with the concentrators. So the PLC is something very common in Europe. Everything's based on a regulation that is called Senelec. That is the frequency range used by these meters used to communicate with the concentrator. They have a very long wave, and there are some protocols both at MAC and physical level for communication. In France, G3 is rocking. Here we have like 50-50. We have prime protocol, and meters are more protocol. And the application layer protocols, we have DLMS or COSAM protocols. As prime is just a little bit more popular, that meters are more, my investigation focused on it. And this is what we had. But this protocol has many interesting things. Okay? But anyway, apart from this security, what do we know about the security of these infrastructures? Well, the European Union some years ago set some kind of working group in order to think about guides and good practices to develop these networks in the framework of the smart grids and so on and so forth. There was a several hundred pages document that was basically smoke. Not because the people behind were clumsy. That's not the point. It was a document that was so generic that can be applicable to almost every computing system and doesn't give hints about such networks. So this is like reading any other manual. So the documentation is not very easy to find. In particular, the DLMS COSAM documentation, that is the one that has to do the application layer, is difficult. It appears on many documents, and some of them are even, you have to pay for them. So it seems that there is some kind of security by obscurity. And the most terrible thing, if we find something important, like, for example, very important, to change the grid would be really painful. And one supplier in this country has 14 million meters. Imagine about changing 14 million meters. So this is the context of security in electric meters. How are you doing? Are we okay? Are we all relaxed? Okay. I'm going to speak about Prime. If we think of the Osi Model, who knows what the Osi Model is? Okay, so there are some layers, like 7 layers. A physical layer, there's the one that deals with the cable, and the application layer, and there are many intermediate layers that take some properties from the network. This would be the normal thing. The point is that in Prime is like maybe the physical layer knows a lot about the top layers and the other way around. So Prime goes from the transportation layer downwards, and it implements many things. It implements transportation functionalities. It also tells it to change the modulation because there are some things at the top. I mean, it is a great show. When I have to explain it, I always take these two parts. The physical layer is based on an FDM with different modulations depending on the link quality. This can also be controlled from the top. And an overpowered MAC layer with steroids, with which you can do association procedures between meters and DCs, ARQ mechanisms, connections for data multiplexation, and automatic promotion of meters to switches. This is the dark thing. So let's talk about the physical channel. What do we know about the physical channel? At a transformation center, we have 3 phases. Because this is why we call three-phase current. So the transformer takes it down to 220. You have the same 3-phase, but at 220. These 3 phases go to the concentrator, and it starts listening to them. And for the distribution, what usually happens is that every house has a single-phase current. So the same geographical area is divided into 3 stages, and there would be 3 segments, 3 PLC segments, independent segments. This would be the normal thing. In the real world, what happens is something terrible. And this is because the current cables are not data transmission lines. They are just very rude cables that are not isolated. The information from one of them goes to the other through inductive coupling. So the concentrator sees meters at every single stage jumping from one to another. But it's even worse. If you are at this very good situation when there are 2 distributors that are very close, that are sharing the neutral cable, the information from one goes to the other and the other way around. So both distributors can see both information from the other one. And this is called Jumpy Meters, and they have to correct this. They have to say, well, skip this meter because it does not belong to me. So here you have to make it, the distributor has to make an effort not to be invaded, so to speak. So this is the thing. And after that, we have this great thing, and this is because the PLC means is variable. There are reflections, there is noise, etc. They created something through which the intermediate meters that there are between different meters can play as a relay, and the other way around. Now you put this functionality together with the Jumpy Meters. Mayhem. So this is the image of what I was telling you. It's very close, it's very far away from the concentrator, and it's asking for a promotion to the PL3 to repeat the traffic. Okay? So let's start getting into more difficult things. Security. What do we know about the security in Prime? Okay. Out of Prime, we have 2 protocols. We have Prime 1.3 and Prime 1.4. The 1.3 is the one that is observed at almost every case. We have performed some tests in Madrid, in Coruña, in Barco de Valdeorras, at my parents' and grandma's house, and we've always seen Prime 1.3. Prime 1.3 defines two levels of security. We have the level without security, the profile 0, that should be used for test deployments to see that everything works as you expect, and to say, well, this plot appears at the right moment. And you have profile 1, that is basic security, that encodes some plots. But this level of security is basically equivalent to non-security. Because of this, if you put in the network, for example, a node that says, hello, I'm your concentrator, but I do not accept profile 0, I don't accept profile 1, you need to go to profile 0, you will say yes, one, and you will go down. But although this wouldn't be possible, the profile 1 is not an option, and everything has to do with how keywords are managed. The idea is that all the prime keywords are based on an algorithm, algorithms that accept some generation keywords in order to generate a working keyword. This is not unsecure by itself. This is done at some contexts. The problem is how we can put all these pieces together. The working key that is used to encode is taken from something that is called sec.ram, that is sent clearly through the cable, so it's not keyword material. There are some intermediate steps until there's a point where you use the MAC of every meter as a seed. The MAC is not keyword material. And at the end, we have a master key 1 and master key 2, out of which master key 1 is fixed at every single meter, at the whole network. In fact, the investigators Alberto Garcia and Javier Vázquez in 2014 reversed a firmware, and they showed this keyword. So working key, from the point of view of security, only comes from master key 2. The rest is noise. So this is the security of Prime 1.3. So what happens? This was a brown rain. So they launched Prime 1.4 that tried to fix all these problems. They added a third profile, the profile 2, that encodes more plots than profile 1. So today we haven't seen Prime 1.4 anywhere. So this is for you to see how language changes from 1.3 to 1.4. And 1.3 tells you that privacy and authentication is based as you are encrypting frames, and everybody should know their keyword. It's authenticated because you know the keyword that you have to use. After that, you were told, well, there's an authentication algorithm that is safe, and so on and so forth. But this is very fun. I mean, this is quite funny. In terms of COSEM, well, DLMS and COSEM is what you use to talk to the meter, to tell him, hey, how much am I consuming? What is the time curve? Or to ask it to do things, to change the pricing periods, to change whatever, to disconnect the internal switch, to open it again. And this is done through an abstraction that's called COSEM, that is some kind of COSEM, some kind of object model, where every object is identified through an instance identifier that's called OBIS, that has 6 bytes. In terms of security, similarly to Prime, it uses 3 levels of security. We have non-security, that would be, well, everything's clear. We have low level of security where the password exchange in clear text in the AARQ message, and high level of security where there's some kind of challenge exchange in 4 stages, out of which is authenticated individually. You can set the encryption optionally. For the encryption, you can either activate it or not. And this, well, forget about this. This is what I was telling you before. This is how the challenge exchange works in the authentication, and these would be the cryptographic switches that you can use for the DLMS, for the encryption, and for the authentication. We have MD5, to SDHA 2.6 and elliptic curves. I mean, you have many things to choose. So this was the theory. So we are going to start to get our hands dirty. I want to see packages. So what do I need? I need packets. I need a PLC modem. So that's very easy, very easy. Okay, I go to the Amazon, I download, no. So what if I ask my distribution company, hey, I see that you're using PLC in your communications. Could you please tell me what sniffer are you using and where to buy it? And they will tell you, who are you? So we can ask the meter manufacturers, because they just make meters. You send them an email and they'll tell you, who are you? So in the end, you have to do the fallback. This is to get in touch with an electronic circuits manufacturer that does SoC systems on chips for these networks for electric counters, and there's one that, as a coincidence, is a developer of an electric meter to make samples and to depur and to purify. So we have to be very thankful to Microchip. This is an ATP. This is the ATPL 360EK. So these are the things that we need to start playing. Apart from this, we have firmware and the firmware code so that you can perform your own samples. So it's a very good example. And apart from that, it includes a tool. It's called the Admiral Plc Sniffer. That is an implementation of a sniffer using these plates. In fact, I'm going to show them. It is this thingy. Okay? In fact, I'm going to do something. No, I won't. No, I'll do it later, because I'm going to crash everything. So the sniffer lets you sniff traffic up to MAC. So you can see prime frames, but you don't see DLMS. You see DLMS as far as it is the frame of the data frames. The interesting thing is not to see prime frames, but to see the clear data. They are using zero profile. Do you know when? Always. At the office, at Coruña, at Barco de Valdeorras, everywhere. So you say, wow. And this program is cool because you can have it in SQLite and you can analyze it. It's really cool. But you say, well, this is up to prime. I want to see DLMS. So I wanted to use such a firmware using the Admiral Studio that can use that you can use to write whatever you want, and I wanted to have a system where I can read DLMS, I can have meters to inject my own things to see what happens, to have a very, very cool console at the serial port. So this was a great fail because of a very easy reason. We have 192 keybase of RAM, so it didn't fit. So let's relax and let's design this differently. I'm going to make this different, become into a modem firmware, so that everything that you read on PLC, you send it through a serial port and vice versa. After that, I wrote a tool that is called PLC Hack. If we have time, I will show it to you in a minute, not now, during the demos. And it orders the modem to do things, and it implements very cool things. Apart from the fact of listing the meters, you can inject traffic, you can try to authenticate against a meter, and so on and so forth. This would be the plate with the firmware already installed. You see that it says PLC Hub 0.1. This is what I had installed. And this would be an example of the meter list that we have at the office. Well, specifically, these are all Landesgier, LGZ, that were observed at the concentrator with the MAC, well, etc. You can see the numbers there. This is what we have at the office. So what happens? The good thing is that I can analyze the DLMS traffic. The DLMS traffic can also be represented as an XML. This was possible thanks to the GuruX services, where you can see many things. For example, here we can see an authentication solution that is called association requests. They're also called ARQs without security. So this is not a problem by itself. Maybe it's an insecurity because it's not critical, but if they configure the encoding, there would be any problem. This would be the response to the authentication. And here we would have, for example, the security configuration. Here we would be configuring the encoding at a DLMS level between both points. Okay. But then I start to see weird things, very weird things. Do you see that says 000001 or 00000004? This doesn't look like serial numbers. So I passed it through GuruX and I saw, wow, authentication 0000, etc. 4. It was like, whoops, it can't be. So it captured another packet. This was fragmented. It had to put it together. Authentication with low security 00001 with a password. Boom. So I see all this, and it is okay. So this justifies to set a lab to play. So time to play. This is what we have here. It makes no sense to point here, but anyway, this is our lab of PLC meters. The lab has a concentrator and 4 smart meters that are connected to the same stage. What happens if I'm going to make tests against this network? I need to limit the range because this is fed with a rooted network, so I'll see concentrators that are not mine. So I have to plug this device that is called isolation transformer that acts as a filter and prevents the frames from going outside. So this is the thing. These are some pictures of the same that you can see here with different details. And well, once we've configured everything, we have to set the concentrator. This is an Ethernet port where there is a web server that you can use to do many things with a concentrator. You have to you need to have a look at all the keywords. I'm not making it up. And look, there's a firmware update. You can update the firmware remotely, so it's amazing. And you can also list counters. It's like, okay, how many counters do you have here? 4, right? How many you see there? Okay, what happened was the following. I had plugged the isolation transformer and I said, okay, I'm isolated, no worries. And I left it plugged during the whole weekend. I came back on Monday and I saw, wow, what's that? LGZ. Do you remember the LGZs? They're the ones at the bottom, the ones of the building. They started to connect to me, and I said, where? Because of the crosstalk, they were getting in through the landline. So I was seeing the concentrator through the landline. So this that costed 90 euros is useless. So this is how it works. In terms of operation, the concentrator operation, well, the distributor didn't see anything about DLMS or Prime. They know that it exists, but they work through some abstract orders that are called Type S and Type B orders. The S orders are report requests, and the B are order implementation. For example, you can measure consumption, whatever, and the B orders let you change some parameters, let you change, for example, the power that you've hired, etc. Here you have some of these elements, and this would be the interface from the concentrator point of view that would give you the possibility of manipulating a specific meter. So be bad, let's play evil. What if, first of all, I started capture PLC frames from my plug?
And what happens if it has not been encrypted for some reason? This also coincidentally matches a DLMS request, and then with password in clear text, and then it impersonates a DC, and then I tell the meter to blow the candle. Well, this sounds very good, but there are many things behind it. Well, I will go quick through that, and I will stick to 2 things. Prime is protocol with a status. The problem there comes from the mix of layers. At the end of the day, the packages are marked with an ID package. The ID package identifies the package that is being sent, and the ID is marks the package that is expected at the other end of the communication. Then there are other parts of Prime that are not documented that need to be reversed. The convergence layer is not well explained. Sometimes you see weird things. If you do not write it well and you do not enter values well, you have problems. Then the model is not trivial, and the request to open and to close the internal switch are not easily found. So very easily we capture traffic, then replay, and then go and fly. And then PLC medium is just terrible. It's the worst of the world. You will be losing lots of traces along the way. Right, this is what I see when I produce a list of the meters. This is traffic. I see the content. I see how this convergence layer is being set up. Well, in the reading only traffic is one way, two way. If the traffic that you should enter is 1, otherwise it will not follow you. This is the closing order. If you analyze the traffic in the application layer and you study the DLMS authenticates low security level, it responds with ARE, it requests an object related to the disconnect control, then it requests it to get disconnected, and then it returns it. In my first attempt, I will launch the command. We'll see how data are being set, and then which is the package that I want to insert. So once I authenticate myself, I start to send in all the operations. In this example, I need to generate that traffic artificially, because if I wait for it, it may take hours. So this is kind of fictional. Because I want to reach the end and to share a good demo with you, I will just play a video as to how I got there. Alright, so hopefully it will not crash. I'm generating the traffic. I just wait for it to finish communication. I am sending an SO6 message. It is about give me all the info from the meter. Once it is over, or once I finish, I authenticate myself. And this is what I did. Once I got the response, I copied the command with all the ID package information, and that was it. Switched off, and okay, stopped. What happens? I knew it. There is a problem there. I need to wait up until traffic shows up. Traffic is not very common in prime networks. Requests are being done once or twice a day to see the consumption during the day. But if you want to launch a serious attack, this is not doable. So therefore, I've decided to do something else because I'm always in a rush. Once I have identified all the meters, what happens if I send in traces all the time saying this is my ID package, my ID package, my ID package? Up until it responds to me. If I use the sequencing information to send in things, well, this is exactly what I did, as you will see in my next slide. Well, I will skip some things because this is quite slow. I have listed meters. So I tell it about the subnet address and the number of the meter I want to target. Then I have to deny the switch level where it is. and the connection is, well, these are things that you have to fully enter. Then book is lifted and it starts to make tests. It will go run and run up until it finds the ID package, because intermediate packages are lost. I am saturating the network. I'm not sending them very quickly, but this medium is terrible, as I told you before. Once I found the sequencing, so your home becomes a rave party. I would like to share demo. Please, all of you, raise your hand. Now, lower your hands, those who don't like raves or nightclubs. Well, sufficient number of people. Good. How much time is left? You should know that this fails quite a lot, not because I want to. Yeah, there is lots of trial and error here. This is hacking, okay, so you try it, and as long as things work and you don't kill anyone, there is no failure. Can you read it from where you are? Okay, I enlarge it. Okay, I hope that you can read it now. This is PLC hack. This is the tool that I use to interact with this modem. This detects the networks around, because prime is weird. So same grid may have several concentrators. So the idea is, well, because there are accidental associations, it wants to know the package it wants to target. So this is identified with the address of each of the meters. That MAC address is added to the content of the package. Then you apply 032, and that is your CRC. So that when the concentrator receives that trace and applies the SNA, you know that it is going to it. Otherwise, it feels it like it's a corrupt package, and therefore it will be ruled out. There you go. Lot of that. Okay, so I switch it off and then I start it again. So as I said, lots of trial and error. Once I have that, I have the subnets. I can use that information to inject traffic in the network and to generate packets that can be understood by the concentrator. So thank you. That counter, no, that meter is not familiar to me. Okay, no problem. what I do now is to launch this snoop command. That is to say, to receive packets and then to show you sequencing information. So I wanted to suggest commands to me so that I can inject traffic real time.
And now I'm going to plug into the concentrator, and I'm going to try to generate some traffic. Come on, you're kidding me? Just imagine that the demo stops because of this. No, it doesn't stop because of this, because of the chroma that is teasing me. Okay, now it works. So pray. Yes, it works. Okay, fine. So admin. And soft wave. Okay, so I'm going to generate S06 traffic, and I see that there's a lot of traffic here, and I have to wait for it to finish. Well, Prime goes this fast. So in the real world, it goes like this, but what really matters me is that it's already done. If I go and say, well, you're going to authenticate with this SNA, this NID, this level number, and this password. Whoops, it answered me. You say, well, now that you are listening to me, you blow the candle. Yes. No, I've lost the sequencing and everything is fucked up. But, well, you saw that you can turn it on and off. But anyway, so the idea is more or less that. So what did I do with the presentation? Okay, here I am. So I feel lucky. I'll try to do the other thing. I told you that I could try to be very intrusive to try to guess out the sequencing information in the bad manners. This is what the data probe command does. It's really invasive. Data probe accepts some parameters that I do not remember. Data prober, SNA, is equal to this number here. This is our sub-network address. I put it here. And ID. Well, maybe this won't work because it feels the network with noise and rubbish, and it drives it crazy. But just for you to know that you can do it. The same thing that we were doing, but in an automatic way. LCID is 0100. This is a connection identifier. This is some kind of port at MAC layer. It makes all the sense in the world. There are some ports in MAC layer, and we don't need level. Okay, so it starts to send samples until it figures out the packet ID. You see? You see? If you want to make your home into a rave, it's possible. It's possible with all these things. This didn't work before. In fact, it has got stuck. No. Okay, amazing. Amazing. F5. Great. So, conclusions. This is the most important thing. Well, Prime 1.3 is basically insecure. Okay? Capturing traffic is possible. Injecting traffic is possible. To interfering with the traffic is also possible. To impersonate the DC, the concentrator, is possible. And we can switch your lights off. But imagine that I'm a stupid person. I say, well, I'm going to switch your lights off, but I'm going to I will force a bogus firmware update and breaking your meter. According to Alberto Garcia and Javier Vázquez, firmwares are not even signed. So you put that blob, they eat it, and that's it. So this is how things work. And there is still a lot to do. We've just seen this segment up to here, but there are many more things. We should analyze the PLC spectrum, because I think that there should be a great mess. I think that it has to be swallowing all types of interferences and noises because of all the commuted sources. If you put a commuted source in your switch, maybe the full block is mute. And if they try to convince you to disconnect that, maybe they have to spend 300 euros to put a filter at your house. So that this is how things work. There was something that I wanted to investigate, that Miguel and Gregorio wanted to investigate, and these were the overflow samples. To see what happens when you start to ask it to register many times, and the register counter that is register meter, sorry, that is 8 bits, it's overwhelmed. And we haven't even started hitting this thingy. Every manufacturer makes it differently. This is not a standard. Maybe we can find potential insecure deployments. I've seen some logs that, well, are amazing. And the potentially remote management protocols that are not well authenticated, etc. So without getting to further detail, fortunately, there's light at the end of the tunnel, because security is possible up to some extent. DLMS offers relatively secure authentication with a story of challenges that are exchanged, and the encoding that can be set in 1,000 different ways. But well, anyway, it is still delicate. And from Logic Security, we have been in touch with some distributors so that we could know their opinion, to see if it made sense to come to the RootedCon to talk about this. Unfortunately, the reception was good, so that is cool, and it makes me sleep at nights. So we know that actions are being taken in order to mitigate the risks. So now this is terrible, but tomorrow it won't. Tomorrow, in a figurative sense. But if I start to be evil, and now I become a psychopath, and I start to send prime frames all over the place, maybe I switch off Madrid's lights. People do very weird things because of very weird reasons. So this is the idea. This is like coronavirus. So one good thing, one bad thing. We're doing things to fix it up, but pay attention. And that's it. Thank you. So I can see some questions. If I start injecting from here, up to what extent, up to where can I go with just one frame? To the other side. It has to do with the mechanism that Prime uses for counters. So it was like, I want to go to this point of the network, but I can't. Just promotion, promotion, promotion. So this is what you have to do. Maybe, for example, if Zaragoza is in the middle, it was, well, that would be a little bit more difficult. Eventually, that's the point. You know what happens. The idea of using repeaters works to some extent. Because if you say, well, let me get to this DC, as when you want to jump to the next network, the counters need to repeat the prime frames, so it's not so easy. It's not that easy, sorry. So these subnetworks can be very big. Especially in Galicia, it's quite normal. These networks are humongous, and they go through the whole mountain. So at least at the sub-network, you can reach everything. And otherwise, you can flash some firmware, so you put a pivot, and you rebound some meters. Yeah, I have to plug it in. You know, I make a device, so I leave it next to the cable. I put it with a reel, and that's it, whatever happens. Okay, questions? Microphone, please. Thank you. Well, in order to create traffic, as we can access our distributed website in order to make requests to the counter, couldn't you generate traffic from there? What do you do with that? Yes, okay. I have no idea of how it works, but as far as I've seen, as PLC is something incredibly slow and bad, to generate traffic is quite invasive, so it wouldn't be weird that distributors had a system to frisk the measurements. So if you can do that, it's magic. You can generate traffic and you can start working. But anyway, you would be hitting yourself. I was hitting this meter from the neighbor. If I switch my lights off, I can't switch it on again because we have a physical switch. Okay, so that's the point. But it's possible. Of course, it's possible. If you are patient, you're patient to have traffic for that neighbor. In that case, you can hit it. If you have that information, that's fine. Okay. Yeah, that's the point. No. We have the same passwords for all of them. Yes. Yeah, for the credentials, yes. In that case, yes. I thought that you meant the sequencing. No, once you have it, it's for everything. In fact, what I've seen is that they do some meters groups, or some groups of meters. There was a selector that lets you choose a password to read and a firmware one. So depending on the ones that were activated, they talked about 1 meters or other meters. So maybe it's more difficult than that, but of course it can be done. And it's a matter of time. You can capture traffic and whatever you find. Okay. More questions? Other question? I can't see further. Oh, yes, here. So I understand that there's no traceability of what you inject, right? The electric companies don't know how to identify you because, well, what do you want to do? Come on. Yeah, things are quite limited because, well, what they'll see is that in their subnetwork something strange has happened. Maybe they can measure the frame's power because it's not very clear that they can do it. They can always do it. So if you are behind a switch, forget it, unless they find you. This is very slow. Since you screwed up and you leave, they don't have room to move. And the point is that the network, although physically has a shape of a blurry star, in practical terms is some kind of mess where everybody sees at the same time. You are accessing some kind of joint means where some kind of wireless network, but instead of having air, you have cables. I have a second question. If you isolate your meter, for example, and you set to SPOF, the company pretending to be your new meter, have you conducted any tests? I mean, is there any way that the electric companies know that you're acting? Well, if you start to SPOF the meters, they have logs. No, I'm not speaking about hitting the meter. You isolate the meter with this device, and you start to inject after the device towards the company controller. If you do it well, maybe I'm showing off, but What do you want to do, mate? No, I guess so, but well, there's some kind of. I mean, they're using things that can't be used to send information. So, if they use authenticated DLMS, well, you're fucked, because you need to know how to generate that ratio, and the security would be reduced. This is quite shabby, and the insuring companies know that their meters will fail. If I send an order and it's not received, they will try some hours later because the network is terrible. So you hit the meter, you reverse all this before the alarms are triggered, and you set your device. Maybe it's possible to do it. But well, use your head. Any other question? I don't see any more questions. Yes. There's another one there. Hello. You need to find the number of sequence. You find the sequence number and you send some messages. The concentrator that doesn't have the sequence number at all. Yeah, that's another thing, yes. Yeah, I skipped that, and that's my fault. When you do this, you're having two competitors in the network. You have the concentrator that had stupid sequencing, and you have another one. If you start to send things, pum 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 pum, and you reverse the meter, just 6 bits, and the meter and the concentrator says, okay, this is my chance. Well, they can kidnap you, so to speak. So this can happen. You have 3 frames, for example. It's like, you know, the meter would be stuck until somebody from the company would come to see what has happened. So this is fallback to shabby meter. If they say that it is inactive for a long time, well, first of all, they send an operator to read on the field, as they used to do. That is still profitable because there are many measurements that they won't be able to do remotely. And after that, they will send another operator to do some noise measurements to see why they are not receiving. And maybe they start to see weird things. They start to see, well, there's no noise here. So these things can happen. I don't know if I'm answering your question more or less. Your question there, yeah? Hello. You've shown that there were many more meters. I can't see you. Hello, yeah, I can see you now. You were seeing many more devices than the ones that you knew of. Is there any way to identify or find where they are or where they belong to? Well, these devices, if you realize, had a serial number, okay? You can ask some things. The exact location, I think you can't. Maybe it would be surprising to me, but it shouldn't be possible. In principle, if you see the line is here, for example, you go down to the port counter, to the port meter, you say, well, it's possible with the third B. Okay, so you're fucked up, because this would be the structure. But beyond that, what happens? What happens? Okay. Now, imagine that imagine that this is real again. Okay, it's done. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Just one question. Imagine, I don't know, that I knew somebody that is occupying a building and he is cracking the whole building. Maybe there would be some consumption peaks that would be quite eye-catching. So my friend decides that he's going to give fake measurings touching the messaging system of their meters, but for anybody to feel that there's a black hole there, he sends it to the others, to the people around, so that they increase their consumption. First of all, I love this question, and you have very weird friends, by the way, because there are many friends. Yeah, friends are always friends. Romance friends. So these thingies have an a command, and this is to change the transformation relationship. Let me explain myself. This works as follows. You have your current lines, and you have a transformer that is coupled to the cables that are passing through. This way we're generating currents that you can measure internally, and you can say, okay, so according to what I'm measuring, as it is proportionate, we are having X amperes at this voltage. So these counters, well, this are single phase, and this is not the case, but the same circuit and the same firmware is used for high voltage meters, where you can't have high tension, because maybe, well, we can't use high voltage for these meters, so maybe they externalize this, they outsource this part, and there are some measurement waves that make a transformation of the current that goes through to measure high voltages in proportion to low voltages, and they make the correction. So what happens? If you come here and you say, well, the transformation relationship is 1,000, so 1 watt is 1 milliwatt right now, so things happen. What happens? You do this, and the electric company will say that numbers don't fit. We can't see it here, but here it says a communication concentrator with low voltage supervision. So this checks that what is being measured by a supervision probe at the transformation center is the same as the power that has been consumed of all the counters that it has. So when numbers don't fit, you can say, well, there's something weird here. But as Roman was saying, I can say, well, I reduce the transformation ratio from 1 to 1,000, and I change that to many people to 0.0001. So you make things up, you balance both things, and things more or less work. You are stealing some watts to the others to gain them. So it would be more or less what would happen. But you need to be a very bad person. Okay, so we all want to drink beer. Thank you very much, Gonzalo. Thank you.